Welcome to Veronica Live. I'm here today with a special guest, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Don Arias, and his brother Adam Arias was actually killed in 9/11. And I've always wanted to learn about Don's story and what happened that day and where we are with the mastermind of this attack. So welcome, Don.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners about my 9/11 experiences and my experiences at Guantanamo Bay over the years.
I can't wait to hear about it. I know we've been friends for a few years now. And take me back to that day. What actually transpired and how did you hear what happened and your brother? Tell us all about that.
Oh, geez, you know, we all remember where we were, but you know, as you mentioned in your open there, I do have this special interest in these trials at Guantanamo Bay and the detainees there. And just as background, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay back in 2009 looking for justice, and what I found there was pretty shocking. And in June of 2009, I attended meetings with the Office of Military Commissions prosecution team in Orlando and also Obama's Guantanamo Task Force in Washington, D.C., and in April of 2014, I traveled back to Guantanamo Bay for yet another hearing for the 9/11 co-conspirators. Needless to say, every one of these encounters I had with the Obama administration was very disappointing. But before I get into that whole controversy of what was swirling around Guantanamo Bay and the military commissions down there, you're quite right. We need to remember the attacks of 9/11 and how that changed our world. It's sad for me because I've got such a personal connection to it, but there were thousands of others, innocent lives that were lost, that were snuffed out in this terrible cascade of, smoke and flames and twisted metal.
Where were you that day, Don?
Well, that morning I was at Tyndall Air Force Base participating in a NORAD exercise. Most people assumed it had been an accident, that some small plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. But I received notification from our Northeast Air Defense Sector in New York that there was a hijacking or a possible hijacking in progress. So I kind of put two and two together and thought, well, geez, could that be the plane that hit the North Tower? Was it a hijacked plane or was it just some small plane, as CNN was reporting on TV? And I had the TV on in my office in the middle of this exercise.
So did you immediately think of your brother at that point too?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I knew he worked in the World Trade Center, but believe it or not, I wasn't sure what building he was in or what floor he was on. I just knew he worked, in finance.
And what
finance
was your
industry.
brother? Oh, financing. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the vice president of operations at Eurobrokers, which was a trading firm, an international trading firm. So I actually called him that morning, and it turned out to be our final conversation, and in that 2-minute conversation, he told me about all the things that he was witnessing. My brother was an eyewitness to history, and how rare is that when you see something unfold, especially something as terrible, in front of his eyes. And
so what did he say to you that morning?
Well, I don't remember exactly because of the fog and friction of war, but he did tell me, like, oh, my God. Well, we're brothers, so we use some foul language, but, he told me a guy just flew past my effing window.
Oh, my goodness.
He told me about people standing at their windows and getting ready to jump or just, contemplating that terrible choice of either the jump or the burn. And, at that...
So at that moment, it was real.
It was real. And
Wow.
I could hear in the background, not just him talking to me what he was saying, but I could hear in the background of his coworkers. I could just tell everybody was looking at the windows.
In shock.
And you could hear the, oh, my gods, and, all of the commotion of, people watching their fellow humans leap to their deaths. It must have been quite the scene.
Right.
And in that quick conversation I had with him, he was like, listen, I got to go. And my last words to him were, go home. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if he ever heard me, if he really heard me or not.
Right.
I said go home, and and that was the last I talked to him, and he hung up, and that was that. So later on, I learned that my brother was killed when Tower 2 of the World Trade Center collapsed.
So did you know that day, or did it take a while to learn that? What had
It
happened?
took a while.
Okay.
He had actually gotten out of the building.
Okay.
And he was in the street assisting firemen and the injured. And although Tower 2, or the South Tower, was the second to be hit, it was the first to collapse.
Wow.
So I'm sure it came as quite a surprise to him, as it did to all of us, when that building came down.
So 16 years later, how do you feel? I mean, does it still hurt you as much as that day, knowing what happened to your brother? Does it ever get easier?
No, it never really gets easy. I've spoken about this a lot of times. I've given a lot of interviews over the years. And as time goes by, I seem to give fewer and fewer interviews, and I deliver fewer and fewer speeches. And I don't know that it gets any easier, Veronica. I think sometimes it actually gets harder, And it all depends on, what mood I'm in that day, or what I had for breakfast that morning, or how I'm feeling about things. You happen to catch me on a good day. It's early in the morning. I'm having coffee, and I'm feeling pretty good about things. But
right.
if I had a couple drinks and on a Saturday night and started thinking about it, it may not be that crisp an interview, I guarantee you.
Because not many of us have had that intimate experience that terrorism has actually impacted our lives. It's touched your life. So what do you think of these terrorists?
Well, yeah, obviously, I think this has taken way too long. Had my brother been mugged and killed on the streets of New York, and they caught the guys, they would either be in jail or on death row. I mean, we'd have some sort of closure, if you'll allow me that cliche. Right. But here, we've got these guys, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his 5 co-conspirators of 9/11, the architects of 9/11, are sitting down there and just, they think they run the place. And to a large degree, they do. We've got a dedicated fifth column in this country and in government that is facilitating their defense, because it's really not about 9/11 for them. It's what a lot of people now are calling lawfare, Lawfare. They're waging war against the institutions of this country through the courts.
Right.
So it's really not about 9/11. This is about sticking it to the man. It's also about these dedicated leftists making a name for themselves. What young lawyer would not want to be part of the trial of the century?
Right.
This is why there was such pressure to have this put into federal court. Now, the difference is, and maybe people don't understand, that this is a military commission.
Right. These are enemy combatants is what they are.
Yeah,
these aren't Americans.
Exactly. With your military background, these are military combatants in violation of the laws of war.
So, yeah,
so
what are your thoughts?
Nuremberg,
yeah.
Just like Nuremberg was a military commission. I mean, that's no better example. After World War II, we had these war criminals. We put them on trial. And within a year, the trials were said, done, and the executions were handed out. And that was that.
Well,
and we were able to close that chapter and move on.
I know the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, they found him and arrested him in 2003, and then he was finally taken to Guantanamo in 2006. It is shocking that it's taken so long. What are your thoughts, too, about when President Obama took office and when he said he was going to close Guantanamo Bay and talked about doing that and then bringing those trials to America? I mean, it was obscene. You know where I was?
Where were you? When President Obama was inaugurated? I was in Guantanamo Bay, in the Chow Hall at Guantanamo Bay, watching the inauguration on TV.
Really? Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah. I had gotten
ironic.
there the day before. It is. I mean, I was actually in Guantanamo Bay when he was sworn in. I was there with my brother Andrew and my sister Lorraine. And we had been chosen by lottery to attend one of the hearings. And it's not a trial, it's a hearing. They've been doing pre-trial hearings for years now. And this particular hearing was a competency hearing for Ramzi bin al-Shibh, who was one of the co-conspirators. We sat in one day of hearings, which was a total farce. And then the next day they said, we're going to suspend the hearings because the new president is going to issue an order. And we watched the inauguration on TV.
So why do you say it was a total farce?
If you looked, just to describe the courtroom the way it was for me, is it was what they call a state-of-the-art 21st century courtroom. They had when we got into the courtroom, we sat in a gallery at the back of the courtroom behind a plate of glass, or what I imagined was double-pane bulletproof glass or whatever.
Do you think they could see you?
Oh, I knew they could. Because Ramzi bin al-Shibh gave me the finger.
Oh, really?
That's how I know.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
My brother and I and my sister went into this gallery, and we had a very kind victim advocate escort with us who was a retired Navy 06, and she was just a wonderful person. She and her staff made sure that we were comfortable throughout and escorted us throughout. But we go into this gallery, and there's this curtain dividing the gallery in half. On one side of the curtain was the press and non-government organizations like Amnesty International, the ACLU, all the peaceniks mixed in with the press. And on the other side of the curtain was the family members, the only real people that had a vested interest in this damn thing.
Right.
And they separated us from the press to, quote-unquote, protect our privacy. So the reporting coming out of Guantanamo Bay is hugely biased leftward because the press and the non-government organizations down there are cheek and jowl in the courtroom. They live in the same area on the base. They travel together. They eat together. They hang out together at Guantanamo Bay after hours because, it is a Navy base and there's a club and all that stuff.
So are you, as a family member, allowed to talk to the press after? Are you allowed to approach them?
We are, but we have to seek them out. We have very few opportunities to talk to the press.
Okay, to clarify things.
Yeah, it is, and we're allowed to, but, some people don't. But it was just this misguided notion that, we 9/11 family members are objects of pity that need to be protected, Whereas, you know me, Veronica.
No,
I'll talk to a post if I have to.
Well, and I'm sure you're angry because I'm still angry, and it didn't, impact me like it impacted you, and I'm angry. So, and to think that there's still no justice 16 years later.
If I may, back to my point at the courtroom, we get in, as we get in the courtroom, we were the last people in the courtroom, by the way. The press and the NGOs were already in place. The prisoners and their counsel were already in place. And as you looked at the courtroom, on the left-hand side were the 5 co-conspirators at 5 separate tables and a row of lawyers. Each one of them had to have at least 5 lawyers.
Oh, my gosh. Really?
And toward the back of the courtroom, there was a bunch of spare lawyers back there on their side. And if you looked at the prosecution side, there were 3 lawyers sitting there. So it's just like that scene in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, like one side of the church is packed and they're swinging from the rafters, and the other side of the church is like 3 people sitting there. That's the way I felt, It was, the government had our government lawyers there prosecuting.
Yeah, and why only 3? I don't understand that when you're trying to have justice for everyone. That just seems so unfair.
I'm sure there's a team behind them, but that's all it really takes to prosecute this.
And the 3 are military, and the judge is military, correct?
Yes, the judge is military. The prosecutors are either military or they're civilian employees of the military.
Okay.
Like GS.
Okay.
And the same with the defense side. There are military lawyers who were appointed to defend Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Okay.
However, they're really not appointed. They're all volunteers. They want you to think they're appointed, and yes,